Welcome to a deep dive into some recent updates from the world of crypto, pulling insights directly from the source material you've shared with us.
That's right. We've got quite a stack of articles here. Covers everything, really some curious individual market plays, major price movement.
Specific project developments, and yeah, some big shifts in the regulatory and legal side of things too.
Exactly. So our mission, as always, is to unpack these pieces, maybe connect a few dots.
And surface what's most important for you to know right now. Yeah, straight from these sources. So let's jump in.
Okay.
Okay, so kicking us off, your sources highlight a really interesting story, almost sounds like an anomaly, involving a specific Solana-based altcoin.
Ah, yes, the one that saw that surprise rise. Apparently it breaks record.
That's the one. And what's notable here, one of your sources links this rise directly to the activity of a, quote, famous whale.
Right, the whale angle.
Yeah.
But here's the twist, isn't it? This particular whale, well, the track record isn't exactly stellar.
No, not at all. The source explicitly points out this individual previously lost in 44 of 48 altcoin transactions. I mean, just think about that for a second. That kind of success rate.
It's a remarkably difficult history, yeah, based purely on that data point from the source.
Exactly. So
Okay.
given that history of, let's just call it challenging performance, how did they do on this specific altcoin, the one that was rising?
Well, according to the source, they made huge profit. It really is a stark contrast.
It feels like it, yeah. How does that even happen?
What was fascinating, just looking at the facts the source provides, right? It
Yeah.
shows how even someone with a documented history of mostly losses
Yeah.
can still hit a really significant win in such a volatile environment. The source contrasting that terrible win rate with this one huge gain. It really highlights how these low probability but high impact events can happen, maybe driven by, specific hype or sometimes just low liquidity in smaller altcoins. It can wildly skew results for one person.
So it's a sharp reminder then that past performance, even detailed data like that 44 out of 48 stat, doesn't always predict these outliers, especially in volatile niches.
Precisely. It underscores that unpredictable nature, particularly with altcoins. That single win, despite the history. Quite the data point from the source.
Okay, so that whale story is, yeah, a fascinating little anomaly. But what about the bigger picture? What do your sources say about, say, major players like Solana and Bitcoin?
Right, broader market.
Yeah.
Well, the sources note Solana's been sort of hovering near the $140 support level.
Uh-huh. And they highlight that pressure seems to be building around that point. There's a warning.
Yeah, it's pretty clear in the text. A break below $140 could send price toward $100.
Wow, okay. That's a significant potential drop. Do the sources give any technical signals to back that up?
They do. They mention the AppCD has turned negative, and the RSI is sitting at 40.03.
Okay, that's important context for traders. So just quickly, MCD turning negative often signals a shift to bearish momentum. And RSI around 40, especially if it was higher before, suggests weakening bullish strength or like market indecision, just like the source mentions.
Exactly. So those technicals are adding weight to the concern around that $140 level for Solana. And the source does describe the environment as generally volatile for SOL right now.
Okay. What about Bitcoin then? Moving over to BTC.
Your sources describe Bitcoin as trading inside a triangle pattern. Apparently, it recently bounced from trendline support near 103K.
And the sources see that bounce is showing bullish signs?
That's the language used, yeah.
Yeah.
The focus for Bitcoin, according to these sources, seems to be on a potential breakout scenario. They're watching the 106K level pretty closely.
Right, the 106K breakout, and if it confirms a move above that.
The sources suggest that may trigger an upside move toward $110K if volume follows the feed. Now, the text cuts off there.
Oh, okay.
But the target seems to be testing $110, but it's contingent on volume. Volume needs to support the move.
Got it. So based on your sources then, the story for Bitcoin sounds, well, cautiously optimistic, focused on breaking resistance, maybe some supportive signs.
Seems that way.
Whereas for Solana, the emphasis is more on defending that critical $140 support based on weakening momentum signals.
A good summary of what the sources are presenting, yeah. Different narratives for the two majors right now.
Okay. So beyond those big price movements, your sources also touch on some specific projects. There's some buzz around Pepe Coin, PEE, reportedly regaining momentum.
Yes, PE's mentioned, and one source even puts out a price prediction. They're expecting a new PP8 expected in Q3.
A new all-time high predicted for Q3. So the source thinks PPE could hit its highest price ever in the next, 3 months or so?
That's the claim in the source, yeah. And interestingly, while PP gets that mention, the same source also notes investors are turning eyes to under-the-radar DeFi token Mutuum F.
Mutuum F. Okay, the name cuts off again.
Yeah, but it points to attention maybe shifting or at least broadening towards other specific projects too.
That mention of an under-the-radar DeFi token is interesting. DeFi, decentralized finance. That whole area focused on financial apps without the usual banks and brokers.
Lending, borrowing, trading.
So seeing investors apparently looking at specific DeFi projects alongside something like a meme coin like PEPE, it just highlights the diversity of interest, doesn't it? Different pockets of the crypto world drawing attention.
Absolutely. And another project highlighted for development momentum is Cardano. Your sources point to rising on-chain metrics there.
Okay, Cardano. What specific metrics do they mention?
Right, they give specifics. Delegated wallets reach 1.33 million, described as a weekly increase of 0.04%.
Okay, 0.04% weekly increase. So small percentage-wise, but steady growth in wallets participating in, like, securing the network.
That's the implication. And your sources also state that the total number of native tokens has grown. Again, the text trailed off a bit. But the takeaway presented is growth in tokens built directly on the Cardano network itself.
So these specific metrics, even if the weekly wallet growth seems small and the token growth is just noted as growth, the sources are presenting these as positive signs, indicators of underlying activity and development momentum on Cardano.
That's how it's framed in the sources, yes.
Yeah.
Suggesting continued engagement from builders and users.
Okay, interesting. Let's shift gears a bit now to the regulatory and legal side. Your sources have some pretty significant updates here. First, the SEC.
Yes, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Your sources report the SEC is withdrawing 14 proposed crypto rules.
14 rules withdrawn. That sounds significant. Is there context on why or who?
Well, it's presented as a major development. The withdrawal is attributed in the source to leadership under Paul Atkins' leadership and apparently happened quite quickly, within 60 days.
Wow. And how are your sources interpreting this move?
They interpret this action as signaling a significant shift in its approach to overseeing digital assets, pulling back proposed rules rather than pushing them forward. Yeah, it certainly suggests a potential change in direction, or at least strategy.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, it hints at potentially evolving dynamics, maybe, how the U.S. regulator plans to interact with crypto, moving away from some previously floated ideas.
That seems to be the implication drawn by the source, yes.
Yeah.
A potential recalibration.
Okay, and then at the same time, there's this ongoing legal situation. Tornado Cash. One source calls it, pretty dramatically, DeFi on trial.
Yes, that case involves Tornado Cash's Roman Storm. According to your sources, he faces a July trial for money laundering.
Money laundering, that's a very serious charge. And the sources emphasize this isn't just about one person, right? The implications are broader.
Much broader, according to the sources. They state flat out that his case could redefine DeFi, open source rights, and crypto privacy in the U.S. courtroom.
Redefine DeFi, open source rights, and crypto privacy. That's huge.
It really is. What your sources are highlighting here is how one specific legal battle could end up setting precedents. Precedents that might shape how decentralized finance protocols can operate legally.
Right.
The legal standing of developers who contribute to open source code, especially if that code is misused, and just the future of privacy tools within crypto in the United States. It's definitely a critical legal event. Lots of eyes on this one for the potential ripple effects.
Wow. Okay, that was quite a range of updates pulled from your sources today. From that really surprising whale trade on a Solana altcoin,
Yeah, the anomaly.
to key technical levels for Bitcoin and Solana, the specific project updates for PPE and Cardano, and then these really significant shifts on the regulatory and legal front with the SEC and Tornado Cash.
Exactly. It really underscores how many different factors are constantly churning in the crypto space.
Yeah.
You've got these individual trading stories, pure market technicals, ongoing project development and adoption.
And then these major legal and regulatory events that could basically rewrite the rules of the game, all happening at once.
Precisely.
So, okay, what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to make sense of it?
Well, I think it just reinforces the incredibly dynamic, multifaceted nature of this market, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We see these surprising individual successes, sometimes in the most volatile corners.
Like the whale story.
Right. Alongside these really fundamental legal battles that could redefine how the tech is treated. All while the major assets are bumping up against critical price levels, Your sources are giving you glimpses into all these different layers.
That brings us nicely to a final thought for you to carry forward, something to mull over based directly on all these updates we've just discussed.
Okay.
Considering that unpredictability we saw in the whale story, contrast that with this sort of structured technical analysis for Bitcoin and Solana, and then layer on top these potentially rule-defining outcomes like the Tornado Cash trial and the SEC seemingly changing course by withdrawing rules. How do you think the very concepts of risk and opportunity in crypto are being fundamentally redefined right now across all these different dimensions?
That's a great question. Something to definitely ponder as you continue your own learning journey through the sources.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.